Welcome to this video presentation on Georgia eligibility criteria for special services and supports in public schools. My name is Molly Wright, and I am a teacher in the Muskogee County School District in Columbus, Georgia. This presentation is part of the HB 671 course subtitled Children with Exceptionalities as part of the Georgia Teacher Academy for Preparation and Pedagogy, led by Mrs. Angie Jacobson of the Muskogee County School District. This video will empower you as a fellow educator to define eligibility criteria, specifically other health impairment, which will involve describing eligibility criteria as it applies to Georgia Department of Education Special Education, defining other health impairment, defining and recognizing best practices to address deliberate self-harm, which includes defining deliberate self-harm, recognizing deliberate self-harm as an other health impairment eligibility, applying best practices to a scenario of deliberate self-harm in a secondary school, and finally, recognizing additional resources for deliberate self-harm as an other health impairment eligibility. The first area we will discuss is eligibility criteria. To be eligible for special services and supports, a student must meet the criteria for eligibility as it pertains to recognized disabilities. A disability fits the eligibility criteria if it interferes with a student's ability to learn using first-tier interventions, necessitating special education interventions. The most commonly recognized disabilities fitting the eligibility criteria include low vision or blindness, deafness or being hard of hearing, and attention deficit or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. A catch-all category for less commonly recognized disabilities is known as other health impairment. These chronic conditions are not otherwise specified. A brief study of the eligibility criteria throughout the United States and our own school district indicates little recognition of mental health conditions within the delineation of eligibility criteria for special education, even within the broader umbrella term other health impairment. Thankfully, awareness around mental health is increasing, and special education professionals are on the forefront of developing best practices to address the educational challenges that face student survivors of mental illness. Unfortunately, deliberate self-harm, or DSH, is not typically recognized apart from larger conditions such as depression and anxiety. While DSH is often concurrent with larger conditions, the risk of committing the fallacy of assuming that correlation equals causation has caused a professional oversight, missing that DSH is in and of itself pathological, chronic, and impacting student learning. The next area we will discuss is best practices for addressing deliberate self-harm. What is deliberate self-harm? Simply put, deliberate self-harm is behavior hurting oneself, whether through cutting, bashing, picking, or other similar behaviors. Associated disorders include trichotillomania, which is pulling out hair, eyelashes, or body hair compulsively. Trichotillomania is a more familiar concept to educators, so describing compulsive behaviors using more familiar concepts can help introduce educators to deliberate self-harm. Why does someone self-harm? When a person cuts or engages in other forms of self-harm, the brain releases dopamine, a kind of anesthetic that temporarily relieves a deeper, ongoing pain. Why should we consider deliberate self-harm and other health impairment in special education eligibility criteria? Deliberate self-harm fits the criteria of other health impairment in that it is pathological, chronic, and it impacts student learning. When our students face a health condition that impacts their education, we are called as educators to join the support circle of that student and to design interventions to help that student and their family. According to a recent study by Kate Curtis, quote, deliberate self-harm has been conceptualized as indicative of mental illness on a continuum ending with suicide, unquote. So cutting oneself or otherwise engaging in self-injury is not always a suicide attempt. In her study for the New Zealand Journal of Psychology, Curtis defines a concept called non-suicidal self-injury, or NSSI. Quote, NSSI may be used as a way of dealing with suicidality, unquote. In other words, deliberate self-harm does not always mean suicidality, and deliberate self-harm might even be a way to combat suicidality, according to the latest research. Why should we focus on deliberate self-harm awareness? As many as 14 to 40% of young people between the ages of 16 and 24 self-harm in the general population of the United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada. So how can we approach deliberate self-harm? In a 2006 study for the British Journal of Guidance and Counseling, Ron Best said that, quote, the findings indicate that teachers' awareness of deliberate self-harm is patchy and that their reactions are often those of shock, panic, and anxiety. Treloar and Lewis's 2008 study reveals that, quote, attempts to develop a more nuanced and empathetic understanding of self-harm within the context of personality disorder is clinically important in today's health system, unquote. What is important in today's health system is also important in today's classroom. Here is a scenario for us to consider. A student confides in you as a teacher that they are cutting. Some good questions to ask would include, since I am a mandatory reporter, how can I honor your dignity in reporting this information to keep you safe? What support system do you have, and how may I be part of that support? Would you like to go to the counselor with me, or can I get another trusted teacher to walk with you? Demonstrate trust in the student to make decisions about their care so that they can assume the responsibility they need to recover. Believing students who survive mental illness is as important as believing survivors of abuse, sexual assault, and other trauma, regardless of the fact that the student is both the inflictor and the recipient of injury. Finally, a word on religion. The South can be a place where pastoral care is a strong community support to those with mental illness, if the proper community context and theological principles coalesce with the mission of a given school district and individual school as part of a public-private partnership. An example of these community supports is at St. Martin's Lutheran Church in Sugar Land, Texas. The Reverend William Starkweather approaches deliberate self-harm using an addiction model, confessional Lutheran approaches to healing, and abundance theology in a beloved community context, a la Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Reverend Starkweather shares his own recovery from self-harm and calls the adults in young people's lives to be part of the awareness of and recovery from self-harm. The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America's National Youth Gathering message on grace for self-harm within Christianity is linked here on the slide. Further resources are listed in these reference slides. Thank you for watching this video presentation.